Why control always creates new fragility. Control feels like safety. The tighter the grip, the calmer everything seems, until the moment it slips. To understand why control breeds fragility, we need to examine what control actually does inside a system. Control reduces variation. It narrows behavior. It enforces consistency. In the short term, this feels powerful. Output stabilize. Errors shrink. Uncertainty fades. The system appears to operate with machine-like precision, delivering predictable results regardless of minor fluctuations in inputs or conditions. This predictability creates confidence among stakeholders. Investors see reliability. Managers see efficiency. Users experience consistency. The psychological appeal of control runs deep because it satisfies a fundamental human desire to impose order on complexity and to transform unpredictable processes into reliable mechanisms. This matters because modern systems are built to maximize control. Algorithms regulate behavior. Policies standardize outcomes. Automation removes discretion. The goal is predictability, because predictability feels manageable. Organizations invest heavily in control infrastructure, monitoring systems that track every metric, feedback mechanisms that correct every deviation, automated responses that eliminate human judgment from routine decisions. The architecture of control becomes embedded in technology, organizational structure, and culture. Success is measured by how tightly behavior can be regulated, how completely variation can be suppressed. At first, control works beautifully. Noise disappears. Performance improves. Deviations are corrected instantly. The system looks strong, disciplined, and reliable. Success reinforces a belief that more control will bring more safety. Early results validate the investment. Quality metrics improve. Defect rates drop. Customer satisfaction rises. Every measurement suggests that control is delivering exactly what it promises. This creates a powerful reinforcement cycle where success justifies expansion of control mechanisms, which in turn produce more measurable success. But beneath this surface, something important is being removed. Variability, choice, redundancy. The system is becoming uniform, and uniform systems behave very differently under stress. The diversity that once allowed different parts to respond differently to changing conditions is being standardized away. The slack that absorbed unexpected events is being optimized out. The alternative pathways that provided options when primary routes failed are being eliminated as inefficient. What remains is a streamlined system that performs brilliantly under expected conditions, but has sacrificed the very attributes that enable adaptation. Control assumes conditions will remain within expected bounds. It optimizes for what usually happens. But when conditions shift, tightly controlled systems have fewer ways to respond. They cannot bend. They must either hold or break. The design philosophy behind control is fundamentally conservative. It encodes assumptions about normal operation and enforces behavior that matches those assumptions. When reality departs from a model, the system lacks the flexibility to deviate from its programmed responses. It cannot improvise, cannot explore alternatives, cannot adjust its strategy to match new circumstances. This creates a paradox. The more control is applied, the more fragile the system becomes to rare events. Stability increases under normal conditions, while resilience quietly drains away. Daily operations become smoother, more efficient, more reliable, but the capacity to withstand shocks atrophies. The system trades robustness across a wide range of conditions for optimized performance in a narrow range. This trade-off remains invisible as long as conditions stay normal, making the growing fragility difficult to detect or acknowledge. Control does not fail immediately. It succeeds. And that success is exactly what makes the eventual failure so complete. As control intensifies, systems begin depending on precision that reality cannot provide. Inputs must arrive on time. Measurements must be accurate. Behavior must stay within narrow bounds. The margin for error shrinks. The system becomes increasingly sensitive to deviations that would have been trivial in a more loosely coupled architecture. Small timing variations that once passed unnoticed now trigger correction mechanisms. Minor measurement uncertainties that were previously absorbed now demand response. The tolerance for imperfection contracts with each iteration of control refinement. This dependency creates hidden stress. Minor deviations require immediate correction. Small delays trigger cascading responses. The system becomes hypersensitive, reacting strongly to issues it once ignored. What was designed to create stability paradoxically creates hair-trigger sensitivity. The control mechanisms that were meant to dampen disturbances instead amplify them by demanding immediate, forceful responses to every perturbation. The system is constantly in a state of active correction, never resting, never settling into equilibrium. Mathematically, this reflects loss of degrees of freedom. Control collapses possible states into a narrow path. Deviations are punished, not absorbed. When a disturbance pushes the system off that path, recovery becomes difficult. The phase space of possible behaviors shrinks dramatically. Where once the system could occupy many different stable configurations, it now must follow a single predetermined trajectory. This reduction in dimensionality means that perturbations have nowhere to dissipate. They must either be forcefully suppressed or they grow into crises. The illusion of safety deepens because controlled systems perform exceptionally well under expected conditions. They outperform flexible systems in calm environments. This reinforces confidence and justifies further tightening. Comparative metrics favor control. Efficiency is higher, waste is lower, variability is reduced. In stable times, the controlled system appears objectively superior. This makes resistance to further control seem irrational, even reckless. Those who advocate for preserving flexibility are dismissed as accepting unnecessary inefficiency. But the price is paid in rare events. When an unexpected shock occurs, the system cannot adapt. It responds with force instead of flexibility. Corrections overshoot. Feedback loops amplify damage. The same mechanisms that maintain such impressive stability under normal conditions now drive instability under abnormal ones. Control systems that operated perfectly within their design envelope fail catastrophically outside it. There is no graceful degradation, no partial functionality, no ability to muddle through. The system either maintains its precisely controlled state or it collapses. What looks like discipline becomes rigidity. What looks like precision becomes brittleness. The system is optimized for a world that no longer exists. The assumptions encoded during the design phase persist even as the environment evolves. Parameters that once described reality now describe an idealized version that reality no longer matches. Yet the control architecture continues operating as if nothing has changed, applying yesterday's solutions to today's problems with increasing irrelevance and danger. The danger is not that control will fail. It is that it will succeed long enough to remove every alternative. And when reality diverges, there will be nowhere left to go. The conflict peaks when control systems begin causing the very instability they were designed to prevent. Interventions arrive faster and stronger, but outcomes grow worse. The system oscillates, overcorrecting in one direction, then another. Each correction produces a reaction that demands a countercorrection. The amplitude of swings increases rather than decreases. What was designed as negative feedback, a stabilizing force, transforms into positive feedback that drives growing oscillations. The control system becomes a primary source of disturbance rather than the solution to external disturbances. This is the emotional breaking point. Operators feel trapped. Releasing control seems dangerous. Tightening it feels necessary. Every option carries risk, and hesitation becomes paralysis. The psychological burden becomes overwhelming. Years of training and experience have taught operators that tighter control means greater safety. Yet they now confront evidence that this fundamental principle has inverted. Their intuitions mislead them. Their expertise traps them. Doing what feels responsible makes things worse, while doing what feels irresponsible might offer the only path to recovery. Mathematically, the system has crossed into a regime where feedback dominates intention. Control signals interact with each other, not just with the environment. The system starts fighting itself. Stability is replaced by tension. The various control loops that were designed independently begin interfering with each other. One mechanism's correction triggers another mechanism's response, which triggers a third mechanism, which circles back to amplify the original disturbance. The system has become a maze of unintended interactions where cause and effect are no longer traceable. At this stage, failures appear sudden and disproportionate. A small disturbance triggers a large response. A minor deviation cascades into widespread disruption. Observers blame the trigger, but the trigger only exposed fragility already built in. Post-mortems focus on proximate cause, the specific event that initiated the cascade, while missing the underlying vulnerability. The real cause is not the final trigger, but the accumulated brittleness created by years of increasing control. The trigger was merely the last stress that exceeded the system's depleted capacity to absorb. What makes this conflict so persistent is incentive. Controlled systems reward short-term success. They penalize variability. Those who question rigidity appear reckless until collapse proves them right. Career advancement goes to those who deliver consistency, not those who maintain resilience. Quarterly reviews reward efficiency gains that come from eliminating slack. Performance evaluations penalize deviations even when those deviations represent healthy adaptation. The organizational reward structure actively selects for behaviors that increase fragility while punishing behaviors that would preserve robustness. The core conflict is not order versus chaos. It is rigidity versus adaptability. And rigidity always reaches its limit first. The resolution comes when control is redefined. Instead of forcing outcomes, systems shift toward guiding behavior within safe boundaries. Mathematics supports this move. Stability comes not from suppressing variation, but from shaping how variation is absorbed. Control mechanisms are redesigned to maintain boundaries rather than dictate trajectories. The focus shifts from enforcing specific states to preventing dangerous states while allowing freedom within safe regions. This approach accepts that many different system configurations can be acceptable and that forcing one particular configuration creates unnecessary brittleness. This changes how systems are built. Control loops are slowed. Buffers are restored. Multiple paths are allowed instead of one correct route. The system regains room to adapt when conditions change. Designers consciously reintroduce slack, extra capacity, redundant pathways, delayed responses that control optimization had stripped away. Response times are lengthened to prevent overcorrection. Tolerances are widened to reduce hypersensitivity. Alternative mechanisms are preserved even when they seem redundant under normal conditions, because their value lies in abnormal conditions. What emerges is not weakness, but resilience. Flexible systems may look less efficient in calm periods, but they survive shocks that destroy rigid ones. They fail locally instead of globally. They bend instead of snapping. When disturbances occur, they degrade gracefully rather than collapsing catastrophically. Performance may dip temporarily, but functionality persists. The system absorbs impacts that would shatter a more optimized architecture. This resilience becomes apparent only in crisis, which is exactly why it tends to be undervalued during stable periods. The deeper lesson is uncomfortable. Control feels responsible. Letting go feels risky. But excessive control creates fragility by removing the very behaviors that make recovery possible. The responsible path is not maximum control, but appropriate control, enough to prevent dangerous deviations, not so much that adaptation becomes impossible. This balance requires judgment, wisdom, and a willingness to tolerate imperfection in service of long-term survival. Systems that endure are not those that demand perfection. They are those that tolerate imperfection gracefully. Control can guide, but adaptability must be allowed to lead. Subscribe to join the journey.